Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here with you. We have some exciting things to talk about today. As you all know, Smart Building Collective, Smart Building Certification is founded in science, refined by practice, constantly optimized by our network of experts. And one of those company experts that's here with us today is NEOWIT out of Norway. And Patrick Edwards, the CEO, is kind enough to give us some time to talk about the company, where they are, what they're working on, and what's going on in their worlds. Just to refresh your memory a little bit about the SBC framework, we have a number of modules that we tackle in the building certification, but also in the solution certification. And NEOWIT just achieved their solution certification, so we can show very clearly kind of how they add value in these different areas. But the first one is building usage, right? How do we have the ability to control and manage how the asset is being utilized? Thinking about occupancy technology, access control, amenity usage, these types of things. And NEOWIT is very prevalent in this space. They're doing some incredible work here. So we're going to hear all about that. Building performance is exactly that. It's all about energy consumption, water. How does the asset perform against its promises? So we'll tackle that in a moment. Building environment is all about health and well-being, thinking about air quality, sound, light. How well are you creating a healthy environment for your organization? Safety and security is about physical, but it's also about digital. How do we make sure that the asset is safe for the people using it? And then finally, user behavior and collaboration. How do we allow people to interact with each other, but also interact with the asset? And all of these are brought together with integrative design and connectivity and infrastructure. Of course, without connectivity and infrastructure, the whole thing falls over. But integrative design is how can we work smarter? How can we, with the least amount of technology, maximize the impact in all of these different areas? So without further ado, I'm going to bring Patrick onto stage, and we're going to talk about NEOWIT. There we are. Hey, Patrick.
Hello.
Nice to see you. Nice to have you here.
Likewise, thank you for inviting us. Good to see you again, Nicholas.
Absolutely. So let's start by starting a little bit with the NEOWIT story. Where are you guys in your journey? When did you guys start? I know that you guys have a really interesting history based on the people you brought together to make this happen. So maybe we can start a little bit with that story.
Absolutely.
And introduce to yourself. Who are you?
Okay, so my name is Patrick Edwards. I'm CEO of a company called NEOWIT. And as you mentioned, based out of Norway. Today we are lucky. We have sun, great weather, plus 20 degrees. It's a good day. The NEOWIT story. So we are a company now with approximately 20 employees. We started 3.5 years ago. And as many know, like Norway, many of us come from the video conferencing industry, right? So from Cisco, Tandberg, and so on. So 3.5 years ago, a few people from that industry, also including myself, but I come more from the AV side of things. We put together an NEOWIT, and we wanted to challenge, like, okay, smart buildings. How do people work? What is actually smart? And how can we integrate technology? And we did the startup in a different way than most. So what we saw was like, okay, if we take the real estate and we take technology, what was easy for us to kind of disrupt? And again, there was a lot of companies in Norway trying to disrupt the security industry. You had like Eva Security and so on. So we saw that, okay, first of all, we wanted to build a platform, right? A software. But to do that properly, we need to understand the building completely. We need to understand it from all aspects, and you have different type of aspects from when it comes to technology in a building. So we started actually off selling fancy security systems where we use that as sensors. So camera sensors, access control as sensors. But that also gave us a better understanding. And then we started using those clients that we got. We grew the client base very rapidly. There was very few or actually none that did what we did. So we got a lot of clients, and then we started interviewing those clients to figure out, okay, what is your pain points today? How do you work? What does your tenant say? What do you want? If you can paint your dream, what would it be? And we used all of that information. And then, of course, we were lucky to get some very, very good developers to join us. And then we started developing our platform. The good thing with being so close to the customer is that you get real feedback, not only by interviewing them, but seeing it live in the field. That gave us a lot of good feedback and information. So 3.5 years later, we now have several clients on our platform. We have, I think, most of the biggest real estate owners, especially in Norway, as clients. And yeah, we are continue developing our platform, and organically have grown up to 20 people.
So the listening to your customer is actually a core philosophy, I guess, in how you, because it's funny you say that. We met NEOWIT through the Husband's House case in Norway. It was the first platinum building certified in Norway, and NEOWIT was in there, and they're providing a lot of the technology that's in that building. And what's really interesting is Husband's House said that you guys were special because of your listening. Yeah. So it's funny that you talk about that now, because that was exactly their feedback, that, you know, NEOWIT is young as a company. They're doing incredible things, but they listen and they take that feedback into their product development. So that's really nice how those two things kind of come together.
Absolutely, and I think it goes also a little bit from the company perspective as well, because in a building you have, like, from security system to network infrastructure to AV to different type of softwares to the economy part or ESG. So when we also build our team, we got people that came from different type of industries, but had a good technology understanding and was good on communicating and listening. So that also helps us a little bit internally when we build our platform or we share ideas. You have our salespeople even that is going out, making notes. Okay, what does the client want? What are they saying? What are they not saying? So yeah, information is relevant if you're going to build something that is a little bit unique.
Fantastic to bring that into the kind of the process core.
Yeah,
having kind of feedback be a core aspect to your process, and iterating versions and innovating based on that feedback. Let's start with building usage, you know, like asset management, or how an asset is being utilized. What are you guys hearing from the market, and how does your solution actually support how an asset can be seen, used?
Yeah. So I think, like, we need to split it in two. Then you have the real estate owner, then you have the tenant. The real estate owner, some of them, and it's such interesting to see from the outside that there's so many, like, how future thinking they are. That depends really on the owner, how willing they are to invest. The ones that usually owns the buildings and is running the facility management and so on. They are like, okay, we want insight. We want to know how is our buildings being used, which days a month, or if we do something, what happens, and it leans into cleaning and all the whole aspects. And then historically, just 3 years ago, the willingness to invest in systems that could count people, give you that insight, the pricing was pretty high, and the willingness was a bit low. But that has also changed, and it can be many reasons for it. One can be like the ESG and sustainability parts of it, making sure that you have good utilization. But then that leads me into the tenants, because what we have seen more and more now is they are very much willing to invest into getting that data. They don't want to pay for 200 square meters more than they actually need, and they need to report on sustainability. Even now, I think it was last week, I heard some rumors that the tenders coming from the Norwegian government, you need to, it's vektet, that's in Norwegian, but how they weigh the tender, now it's 30% on sustainability and environment.
Wow.
And that's a standard going forward. And so have we seen in tender documents coming from the tenants, like privately owned companies. They might be on the stock market or even. So it drags like it makes a effect between the tenant and the real estate owner. Usually what we have seen is that the tenants are more ahead compared to the real estate owners. But now, because maybe of all these sustainability requirements, and that we see that tenants puts more pressure on the real estate owners, that will also evolve the technology investments going forward.
Yeah,
and the willingness to pay.
It's interesting because I had a discussion this morning about your favorite word, prop tech. When you're putting different technologies in the life cycle of a building and in a relationship between the owner and the tenant, which technology goes in at what stage, right? And what we see is that the sensor network is sometimes being thought about too late, right? The app or the user application is being thought about too early, and I think we're maturing now as an industry where we're going to get that right, where we're starting to say which phase does it go in, and then comes the question of who owns it, who bought it, who's paying for it, and for what reason. And I think that's really interesting because
what you mentioned there, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, because the tenant might want it, but who pays for it? Should the tenant pay for it, or should the owner actually say, no, I've done this for you?
Yeah. Or maybe the real estate owners come to the part where they start offering technology as a service for the tenants.
Yeah. But that's not possible in all countries.
No.
So there's law and legality to it, and depending on the structure of the investment, you can't have additional services. You can only charge the rent fee, right? So these kinds of things are,
and it's different from countries to countries, absolutely. And we already saw that. We actually asked some of our international clients about have they thought about it, and we asked some of the Norwegians. There was very few of the Norwegians that had thought about it, and some had actually started, but there was a few parts of in Europe where they said no, we can't do that due to law.
Yeah. And we still see that we're in the early adopters, right? The early adopters are still bringing on this technology. Do you see it the same way, or do you see us now moving past that? Is it becoming more normal practice, or do we still have some ways to go?
I can't say it's becoming a normal practice. Still, it's still in the early stages, but I think there's a domino effect of several things here. You have the hybrid work that affects the tenants. Then you have the sustainability ESG requirements that affect both the tenant and the real estate owner. And still, what the biggest trend that we see is that the tenant pushes the real estate owner. And I've maybe not the case, but I've said it a few times that real estate, that is finance with some materials. The owner, they want to make sure that they get some return on investments. And okay, but where do they get their money from? Well, they get it from the tenants. And in order to attract the tenants, they need to also listen to them and adapt their services or offering towards the tenants. So with that in mind, I think that also going to affect the technology investments going forward.
Yeah, 100%. So from a building usage perspective, when we're trying to help tenants and owners get a better control of how their asset is being utilized, how their amenities are being used, access control, these types of things, to a more boring question, what does the NEOWIT solution do for that space?
Yeah, so
it's not boring, but it's,
no.
the philosophical questions we're having are far more interesting.
Yeah,
technology is just a tool to achieve those other things that we're talking about.
So our platform is sensor independent. And when I say sensor, that can be a screen, it can be a video conferencing equipment, it can be a security camera, it can be an access control device, or it can be a people counting sensor, right? So in a building today, there is most likely a motion sensor that runs maybe on KNX. Then you have the tenants who go in and have some UC equipment that can do people counting. Or they have security cameras where we actually are able to pull out the metadata to count people. So we look at what can we reuse, right? A lot of tech companies, they want to push a lot of hardware on you and so on. But what can we reuse?
Yeah.
So we want to pull the data out of that. That can be for the real estate owner in terms of, okay, which areas are most used? Which days are the cantina most used, or the lunch area, or the gym that you spent 3 million on? Is it being used? Should you continue doing that or not? Or the parking space, right? That can be done by reusing security cameras.
Yeah.
Or maybe just add a few cameras and then you get the insights. All of that data flows into our platform. And that can be another example we are working on right now is shopping centers, right? So you have packed with security cameras. We take out the metadata, so no personal data at all. Which areas of the shopping center is most popular? Can the real estate owner use that data to adjust the rental pricing? Or can they do steps or things to increase traffic in the area that doesn't have any traffic?
Mm-hmm.
That also helps the tenants, right? And we basically provide one platform that goes both for the tenant and the real estate owner to get the insight of how your buildings are being used.
Yeah, really interesting. And I think it speaks, of course, to your all's experience of where you came from before starting NEOWIT, because, we went into a room the other day and you saw 5 sensors all doing the same thing, but for different reasons, right? You have one for the AV system, one for the lighting, one for the room booking, one for the, it's crazy.
Yep.
And so we need to be working smarter. How can we, with the least amount of technology, have impact on all of these different areas? And it's easier said than done because there's a stakeholder map that is connected to all those technologies, and and a stakeholder map behind those technologies. So how do you guys deal with that? Because that's a challenge. That's
Yeah.
really,
So, I've always said that the big challenge is that there's so many technology silos, right? Um, and but there's another challenge for the end user, is that historically they have been buying in silos as well.
yeah,
So they have gone and buy from the automation companies, the electro companies, the AV, the IT, or the specialist companies. But who needs to be the project manager for all of this? And then maybe rent in a consultant, right? But how do you know that the consultant knows all about these things? You have no guarantees. So it's challenging for the end user as well. And if you look at the electro companies, and I might be swearing in the church, sorry, all electro people, but historically they have been selling the same type of sensors or solutions for building management that they have done for 15 years. Many are not aware of, let's take a meeting room as an example, since I come from the AV industry. So today, the customer go and buy, we need video conferencing with Teams. And then they go and say, we need the motion sensor to trigger the lights. And oh, by the way, we want to have people counting. And oh, by the way, we want to have air quality. So already there, you have bought from maybe 3-4 different companies. How many logins do you need to have just to get some data? That's 3, 4, 5 different logins. And then you need to try to integrate that. But what many aren't aware of is that, okay, if you invest maybe 500 euros more in your video conferencing equipment, you actually have air quality, motion sensor, people counting, and video conferencing in one system. Yeah. And it's open. It has an open API. You don't need to start making integration work or custom programming. And that's like the big challenge for the end user, and also because there's so many technology silos, and these silos doesn't speak to each other. Neither does the companies out there. So that's going to be like our biggest competitor. That's the habits. It's not a different company. It's the habits of the end users or the different companies that is out selling technology.
And I like how you guys are approaching that, because that in a way becomes your competitive advantage. If you guys can actually help break down all those silos and really think about it from a process perspective and a human perspective, then, that is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
It's tough when every time you buy a solution, it comes in with new hardware, new software, new everything. Yeah. And you still have your other systems that you're running. That integration is becoming more and more challenging. So I think that's it's actually a little bit reverse from others' approach, in the sense that they integrate and then they go into buildings, or they, worst case scenario, they get bought into a building and then they say, hey, can you talk to Joe and can you talk to Sam?
Yeah.
It's actually nice to look backwards to say, well, what do you already have and how can we pull more out of that?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
What we have seen now, the last year, is that many of our customers, they know that we are basically a software house, right? That makes our platform, but they come to us and ask, hey, we are going to build a new building. Could you guys give us some advice on what we should invest in tech-wise? So we often give them a little bit of the advice. We can make sure that there's open APIs. Okay, you're going to have a meeting room center. You're going to have access control, maybe visitor management, other types of security, elevators, even soap dispensers. So yeah, but okay, are you going to save like 20 euros per soap dispenser, or should you just have it online so you can be? Maybe it's expensive now, but in 2 years you have it already counted it in. So we try to advise, and also our tech team is testing constantly different type of technologies. What works, what doesn't work.
Well, and it's early days. Like I said, we're still with early adopters, and we are getting requests now earlier and earlier in the process where they say, hey, can we get a smart building certification?
Yeah.
And we say, oh, well, what's been decided? What do you have? And they say, oh, well, nothing yet. It's
No.
like, okay.
Yeah,
That's
I
really
agree.
interesting. And it's a beautiful opportunity to kind of help that process of building these things better. The other thing that we see to that last discussion we were having is that when we certify a building, we can kind of backwards engineer how the technology impacts that certification. And
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting thing to be doing together, because then you can see, hey, this building is using this much of the solution, but the solution is actually capable of this much more. How do we get more out of it? You know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's like that's return on investment.
Yeah.
But it's also everyone's job that works with technology to train, coach, advise, and in a consultative way to each end user or even other technology companies.
Yeah.
And I think that will drive a lot of change in the technology investments going forward.
Well, and you and I both spoke about, how do you get started? And it's you get started small and you grow from there. Don't try and do it all at once. Get started small and grow. But that's a really beautiful opportunity, because a lot of those solutions that you have if you start small with them, there's a lot of room for expansion in functionality and not necessarily in cost.
Yeah.
There's more benefits to pull out of it every time.
Yeah.
Let's move to building performance. When we talk about sustainability, ESG, energy, water, that kind of stuff, how does your guys' platform support that?
Mm.
And what are you guys doing in that space right now to help the challenging discussion of ESG and what it is and what do we do? And
so there's many ways I can twist and bend the answers to that question.
Everybody can. Yeah.
I have a favorite question that I always ask customers. What do you base your technology or your investments generally on? What type of data do you have? What do you base your investments on? How do you decide how many square meters, or if you're going to have this or that big cantina, or make this or that much food, or have this and that much cleaning, or whatever type of investments?
And what's the answer?
And it's usually a trick question, so I usually stop them. So I spare them for the embarrassment, because I know 98% of times they actually don't have any concrete data.
Yeah.
Well, is that sustainable? Nope. So then you have your answer. We provide the data so you can make sustainable decisions. For the tenants, well, how much? It's basically the same question. What do you base your technology investments or your investments in general? How do you decide many square meters do you have? And then you could take the math yourself in terms of CO2 emissions going out or whatever. But in general, we provide the data. There's also, of course, different type of aspects of our platform. For example, the workspace part, where we save time for the users. Do they know that traveling 45 minutes each morning, are they sure that they will get a desk or a meeting room? And there's other type of things where you can do automation to save energy and all these things. But that's what everyone else is talking about. That's boring. Now you get data to make decisions, basically.
Yeah. No, and what you see is that it needs to be value case driven, right? Like no building is the same, no organization is the same, and the data set is going to mean different things for different people.
Yeah.
So how do you make incremental improvements, right?
Yes.
Always, saving and being more sustainable. Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's, of course, from the tech perspective, that's also things that we can do. Okay, so what happens if the building starts to learn and act based on actual data in terms of energy consumption? That's sustainability.
Yeah. And that's
So,
where you guys are, that's where it's going, is that on-demand change based on usage and based on the parameters that the data is showing. Yeah.
and forecasting and so on. Yes.
So I think that answer plays into the next module, which is building environment, about healthy office, healthy environment, making the asset perform better for people.
Mm-hmm.
You say something about how you guys are supporting kind of the attractiveness or the indoor environment or the health aspects of building?
So, as I mentioned, we come from the AV space, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're working in AV and UC, like video conferencing and meeting room equipment and so on, you don't succeed in that unless you know what is the challenging things during a day for a worker in a building or in an office space.
The friction moments, yeah.
Yes, and I wrote an article about something called ghost meetings a few weeks back, and many is like, well, what's that? Well, it's a global problem that many they don't know that they have it even. That means that, let's say, Nicholas, that you book this meeting room and you set off 2 hours, but you don't show up.
Yeah.
What kind of problems does that generate in an office space? Well, people are looking for available meeting rooms. They can't find it. The booking panel outside says, no, this room is booked, but there's no one there. That's bad space utilization. It creates hassle for the other employees. And the data that the tenant gets is wrong, because they think, oh, we have so few meeting rooms. We need more space and more meeting rooms.
And in some instances, it's kicked off the climate installation to get the meeting room ready.
Yes, and it pumps a lot of air, right? Yeah. And it just creates a big mess. And very few is aware that they have that problem. The only problem they know, we struggle to find available meeting rooms. Yeah. So what we did was, okay, we need to give some value to the tenants. So we took all of our AVUC knowledge, we put that into the platform, and we said, okay, let's disrupt the workspace application market. Usually that is a software that is sold separately. But what that happens is that we can say to our tenant that, well, now you can get the state-of-the-art workspace application that integrates with Exchange, your booking system, way of working, free seating, live view of your workspace. I can get it from my phone. I can decide should I go to the office, or when I travel to Amsterdam, I can see where in the building should I find available desk or meeting room. And we put a lot of automatic in it. And at any given time, you can integrate other type of things. Your access control, your visitor management, whatever type of technology, even your UC equipment. Yeah, we use that equipment as well into that that platform.
Yeah, and so it can re-release those rooms when they're not being used, that type of stuff. But there's also a movement now to get rid of booking rooms altogether, right?
Yes.
Where you just look real time what's being used, what's not being used, and go take what's not being used. Yes. And let's get away from these ghost meetings completely.
Yeah. So and the companies are different, right? Some want everything to be free seating, some want everything to be bookable, some want a mix. There's regional differences. It can be mixes on floors in a building, but everything of that is covered in our platform. And what happened? That's the funny part from the NEOWIT's point of view is that, okay, that helps us get into the tenants.
Yeah.
They then push the real estate owner. Why don't you guys go and invest in technology that can integrate with this platform? You guys can get access to this, and you can get this. And that also helps our sales a little bit from the commercial side of things.
Yeah. No, and I think what we see from your solution certification is that your platform is able to bring in all kinds of air quality data and light data and these kinds of things. And of course, a workplace tool like this is fundamental in design decision making, right? When you're trying to make changes, you can see exactly what's been used, what's been utilized, what hasn't, and then make adjustments based on that.
Indeed.
And then, yeah, safety and security, that's an interesting module with you guys because you guys are so, well versed in the CCTV, the security cameras, access control. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your guys' vision on physical safety, but also kind of digital safety, because I know as we digitize buildings more and more, cybersecurity is only going to grow as a threat. So yeah,
Absolutely.
how are you guys looking at those two things?
Yeah, so we are looking at it from different angles, and again back to the listening to the customers, right? You have different type of customers. You have the ones that's normal company. You have the health sector. Then the security needs cranks up a bit, and then you have the military grade where everything is graded. You can't do anything. They can't be in the cloud. It doesn't matter how much safety you can provide them. They do not do cloud.
Yeah.
So what we did was that, okay, we tested a lot of sensors or technologies. And then we saw, okay, first of all, GDPR. Where do you store your data? What type of data? How far have they come in their GDPR compliance? What does lawyers say? We had lawyers to review all of the recommended technologies that we have. We spent a lot of money on it. And then from the platform side of things, well, a lot of us come from Cisco and Pexip and so on. Okay, everything needs to be encrypted. Then you have the physical security part. So, okay, what is there today? Have the old-fashioned security systems, do they think about cybersecurity? Many times it's locked down in the basement, okay, but what is actually security then? How many people have thought about tailgating? And then if you look at all the things that we do in our platform, how can we also hide or anonymize the data most humanly possible? So a question that we also, every time we come to the customers, we ask them, okay, have you guys made a document that we need to fill out when it comes to security? That's the first step. Not everyone has done it,
No.
but some of the people that has done it very well, they have like a form that we need to fill out, we need to document. In Norway, we have something called databehandleravtale, and it's a global thing. So it's like you need to have everything in place. We do reviews internally. I don't have access to any security systems at all. I'm not even allowed to log into the setup of the video conferencing gears that we have. It's certain people internally. So we have spent a lot of resources on the security part.
I'm getting that right. Yeah.
Also, let other companies, when you feel it, when you sit with an end user that, yeah, maybe they haven't come that far. Well, put them in touch with someone who has. Let them share knowledge towards each other. Okay, maybe if you need any advice, yeah, we put them in contact with certain lawyers. And then, again, internally, communication for that company, a lot of companies, they need advice there as well.
Yeah.
So am I, as a employee in that building, being monitored? They want to know. They need that communication. So that's also something that we try to advise on.
That's a whole nother subject, right? I think that's like, we had a university here in the Netherlands where all the students kept ripping the cameras and the sensors off of the walls because they didn't want to be monitored. But at the same time, that's not what it was doing. It was actually adding value in a lot of ways. But if you don't communicate that, that's really really interesting. And so how well do you think buildings are covering that right now?
I think again it's split in two. The tenants they are at least in the Nordic region pretty covered in many ways. I'm not in depth on what they do on the cyber security parts of their softwares, emails, and so on. But the real estate owners, the only times we actually get questions about it, of course, GDPR, when we say that we can do people counting, well, we show them that, okay, we take out the metadata. There's no personal data at all. Or if you are paranoid, we can even turn off the recording, take out the memory, and only pick out the metadata. But most of the times they come with more questions when it comes to security. That's also driven by the tenant.
Yeah.
Because they might get a tenant that has a high security demand. So they need to reply to that tenant.
Yeah. Amazing.
But it's a very relevant question and a relevant subject, because security with today's insecurities in many ways, cyber security on your devices, everything is
one of our colleagues, he's done some work with the State Department in the U.S., and he was telling me about this case where a building got taken for ransom, and it took him 90 days to get it back online.
Yes.
And he says that the cybersecurity and real estate in general, there's a huge risk there that we need to take into consideration, and we have some really cool partners and organizations that can definitely help with that and start to navigate that. But also, I think Patrick speaks to the right tone of collective collaboration. When you don't have the answer exists. It's just it's close. It's just about invoking the collective to help you find it. We talked about user behavior and collaboration a little bit. Your guys' platform does a lot in that space to try and help people navigate, help people get better use of these things. So the last kind of module that we have in the solution certification and in the SBC framework is connectivity and integrative design. So integrative design, pretty sure I know that you guys are integratable. You guys are open to all of those technologies that exist. So that's pretty cool. What are you seeing from a connectivity perspective? Is that hindering your solution at times, or are we in a good state? And maybe it's different in Norway, of course, than it is somewhere else. But connectivity is a pretty hot topic at the moment.
Yeah, a big question that we get from the real estate owners especially is, okay, we want to get the BMS systems to act based on this data.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And then that creates a lot of follow-up questions from our side about the BMS system. And usually the limitations, they lie in the BMS systems itself. They may be invested in a BMS system that doesn't have any APIs or haven't any opportunity to receive any signals. Or it can receive like the KNX, BACnet, and so on. And then you need to do some custom integrations. Maybe the cost is not, they're not willing to take that maybe. So from our side, I can't share what we're working on, but there's a few cool things that will at least help.
Well, let's flip that then. What is the advice that you would give a developer who either is building something from scratch or has something now, and maybe an advice for both? when thinking about their smart building journey?
When you're going to invest in technology for your building, make sure that the technology that you choose has an open API. However, in some cases, that's not good enough, because a lot of the tech companies say that they have an open API, and they might do, but the API is shit. Make sure that you do an evaluation of something that you know that is future-proof. Ask the tech companies that you're going to buy from. Can you show me some examples from a customer who bought something 3 years ago and that the product has evolved? Show me clear examples, because it's hard for the end user to decide what to do.
100%.
But I also think it's maybe some of the most important things that they do right now is to get a better tech understanding. Talk with people, get to know them, have some sparring partners. Okay, have you seen this product? What do you think? Oh, but I see that their numbers is bad, or oh, they have only existed this and this long. But that can be a good thing, because look what they have done. They need sparring partners to help them. Don't go and ask the old-fashioned IT, AV, electro. Ask broader to get yourself a better tech understanding.
Well, and what I find, what we're working on is that, when you go down a sales process with one provider, you're getting a very, focused story from them based on what you're trying to do. What we like to do is, if you are thinking about workplace performance, or you're thinking about energy optimization, or you're thinking about a holistic smart building platform, you're thinking about big building or big solutions or small solutions, whatever it may be, think about bringing a number of them around the table and say, first, okay, workplace management, what do I need to think about when thinking about workplace management? And before we even talk about the solution, before we even talk about the tech, let's just get the ideas of what people think about it, and have them, have these competitors sit across the table from each other, even do it very open, transparent, and then listen and see which one resonates with you. And then you say, hey, maybe, NEOWIT and another one, let's go further with those. I liked what you had to say.
Yeah.
Because you can see the closed offness, you can see the openness, you can see the culture and the personality of the company come through those kinds of sessions. So
follow up on that, to get inspired.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, seriously, if you go on Google and you search for tech,
you'll find a lot of them.
And you get lost. They're real estate owners. Go to a tech IC, for example. Go and see what's out there, what's moving, what's shaking. Create a network. Make sure at least the API part is covered, because one thing is the investment or the building that you're building now, but you're going to build one in 5 years from now on as well. So at a certain point, you need to get the knowledge, or you need to have a person who can guide you.
Exactly. And plug into networks like us and partners like you, where it's just they're a phone call away. NEOWIT is always open and willing to have the conversation. So we recommend you get in touch with them to learn about their solution, learn about what's going on in their space. Thank you so much, Patrick, for your time and your energy.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. And, NEOWIT just achieved their solution certification. And what that does for us is it allows us to know exactly what their solution does, so we can help you in navigating your challenges, as we would say.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much,
my friend. And we'll be in touch.
Yes. Cheers. Bye.